I returned from a business trip to find my sister and her kids living in my apartment, with my parents' blessing. I, 29 male, work as a specialized logistics consultant for the pharmaceutical industry. My job is essentially 90% travel, 10% recovering from jet lag in various time zones. Because my life is spent in sterilized hotel rooms and chaotic airports, my apartment is my sacred space. I bought a 2-bedroom condo in a secure building in downtown Chicago 3 years ago. It is minimalist, clean, quiet, and excessively organized. It is the one place on Earth where I have total control over my environment, or at least it was, until last week. I have a strict boundary about my home. Nobody stays there when I am not there. I don't do house sitters, I don't do Airbnb, and I definitely don't do couch surfers. However, I gave a spare key and the alarm code to my mother a year ago. She lives 2 hours away in the suburbs, but the logic was that if I ever got hit by a bus or stuck in a foreign country during a lockdown, someone needed to be able to access my physical files and water the plants. It was supposed to be for emergencies only. 2 weeks ago, I flew to Zurich for what was supposed to be a standard compliance audit. It was a grueling trip, the kind where you sleep 4 hours at night and live on double espressos. I wrapped up the project a day early and managed to switch my flight to get home sooner. I landed back at O'Hare yesterday afternoon, completely drained, smelling like recycled airplane air. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of scotch, and silence. I took an Uber home, dragging my suitcase to my door around 4 p.m. I punched in my code on the smart lock. Access denied. I frowned. I assumed I fat-fingered it, so I tried again, slower this time. Access denied. I thought the battery might be dead, so I pulled out my physical key. I slid it into the cylinder, but it wouldn't turn. It didn't even go all the way in. The lock had been changed. Not jammed, physically replaced. Panic spiked in my chest. My first thought was that I had been robbed, or maybe the condo association had seized the unit for some clerical error. I pounded on the door. "Who is it?" The voice wasn't a burglar. It wasn't the building manager. It was my sister, 32, female. "Open the door," I shouted, my confusion instantly morphing into anger. There was a fumbling sound, the slide of a chain lock. I don't have a chain lock, so that was new. And the door opened. My sister stood there. She was wearing my expensive Egyptian cotton rab boat, which was stained with something brown on the lapel. Behind her, the smell hit me like a physical wall. Stale baby formula, frying grease, and that specific sour scent of dirty laundry. "Oh," she said, looking annoyed rather than surprised. "You were back early. Mom said you were gone until Sunday." I didn't even answer. I pushed past her into the hallway. My sanctuary was gone. The living room looked like a bomb had gone off in a daycare center. There were plastic toys scattered across my vintage Persian rug. My leather sofa was covered in a sticky film and piled with unfolded clothes. There was a playpen set up in the middle of the room. 2 kids, my nephews, 4M and 2M, were screaming at my 65-inch OLED TV, which was blasting cartoons at maximum volume. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of exhaustion and pure rage. She tightened the robe around herself, adopting that smug, defensive posture she has perfected since we were teenagers. "I lost the key Mom gave me, so I had to call a locksmith. He put a new one on. It was expensive, by the way. You owe me $200. I stared at her, my brain struggling to process the audacity. "I owe you? You broke into my house." "I didn't break in," she scoffed, walking past me to the kitchen. "Mom gave me the code. I needed a place to stay. Brian and I broke up again, and the landlord was being a jerk about the rent, so we left." "You left, or were you evicted?" I asked, following her. "Does it matter?" She opened the fridge. It was packed with food I didn't buy, jars of baby food, cheap beer, takeout containers. She popped open a soda. "Look, don't be dramatic. You are never here anyway. We're just crashing until I get my settlement check." My sister has been waiting for a mythical settlement check from a minor car accident for 3 years. It's her answer to everything. It's never coming. Get out, I said. Pack your stuff. Get the kids. Leave now. No, she said, taking a sip of the soda. Excuse me? I said no. Mom said you could stay. She said you have plenty of room and you make too much money to care about sharing. Plus, I have already changed my mailing address to here, so legally I live here. You can't kick me out without an eviction notice. I looked it up. She smiled. It was a cold, practiced smile. She had prepared for this conversation. She knew exactly what she was doing. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I walked past her into my bedroom. It was worse. My bed was unmade, covered in clothes that weren't mine. My home office, the second bedroom, had been dismantled. My monitors were unplugged and stacked in a corner to make room for a crib. My server rack, which runs my personal cloud and some work simulations, was unplugged. I pulled out my phone and called my parents. Mother answered on the second ring. Hi, honey. Did you land safely? Why is sister in my apartment? I asked, cutting the politeness. Oh, good, you found them, she said, her voice dropping into that soothing, gaslighting tone she uses to gaslight me. Listen, she was in a desperate situation. Brian kicked them out. She told me they left because of rent, I interrupted. Well, it's complicated. She had nowhere to go. We couldn't take her because your father is turning the guest room into a home gym. We knew you wouldn't mind helping family. You have that big, empty apartment. I do mind. I mind that you gave her my code. I mind that she changed my locks. I mind that she's claiming tenancy rights. Don't use that word, Mother snapped. She's your sister. She's a guest. You need to stop being so selfish. You make 6 figures, you travel the world, and you can't let your nephews sleep in a warm bed? She has 24 hours, I said. If she isn't gone by tomorrow evening, I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, my father chimed in from the background. You call the cops on your sister, and you're dead to us. Do you hear me? We raised you better than that. You raised an entitled monster, I said, and I hung up. I didn't stay there. I couldn't. I grabbed my Pelican case with my laptop and hard drives, checking quickly to make sure the seals hadn't been tampered with, and walked out. I checked into a hotel down the street. I needed to think. My sister was right about one thing. In Chicago, tenancy laws are tricky. If she could prove she had established residency, getting her out could take months of court dates while she destroyed my property. The mailing address comment was a massive red flag. She was trying to anchor herself. But she made a mistake. She assumed I was just a corporate drone. She forgot I work in security compliance and data logistics. I opened my laptop and connected to my apartment's network. She had unplugged the main router in the living room, probably to plug in a baby monitor, but I have a redundant system. I run a home lab for work, so I have a 5G failover modem in the locked server cabinet in the office. They hadn't managed to break into the actual server cabinet yet.
Network was still live on the backup. I pulled up the history logs. She hadn't arrived yesterday. She had been there for 10 days. I watched the footage from the camera hidden in the smoke detector in the hallway, a backup system I installed after a break-in attempt 2 years ago. I never told my family about it because, frankly, I never trusted them not to be snooping if they visited. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a messy house. 3 days ago, a man entered the apartment. Not Brian, a guy I had never seen before. He was skinny, twitchy, carrying a large duffel bag. They went into my office. He came out 10 minutes later without the bag. Then I saw my sister sitting at my dining table photographing documents, my documents. She had pried open my filing cabinet with a butter knife. She was taking pictures of my passport, my birth certificate, and my social security card. She wasn't just squatting, she was stealing my identity. And then the kicker. I watched a clip from 2 days ago. Mother was there, in my apartment. She was holding a stack of envelopes.
"Here," Mother said on the recording, handing them to my sister. "These are the credit card applications. Use his middle name. He never uses it on his main accounts, so it won't trigger an alert immediately." "Are you sure?" Sister asked. "Yes, we will pay it back once the settlement comes through. He won't even notice." I sat in that hotel room, staring at the screen, feeling the nausea roll over me. This wasn't just my sister being a leech. This was a conspiracy. My parents weren't enablers. They were accomplices. They had sanctioned the theft of my identity to fund my sister's life because they were too broke or too selfish to do it themselves. I didn't sleep. I spent the night building a file. I downloaded every relevant clip. I pulled my credit reports. 3 inquiries had hit in the last week. 2 credit cards and a personal loan for $20,000 had been opened in my name. The next morning, I didn't call the police immediately. I called a lawyer I know who specializes in property and fraud. "Here is the situation," I told him. "My family broke in, changed the locks, and is committing active identity theft and fraud inside the unit right now." "If she claims tenancy," the lawyer said, "the police might say it is a civil matter and walk away. We need to prove she is a trespasser engaging in criminal activity. Do you have proof of the fraud?" "I have video of them conspiring to open the accounts," I said. "I have video of her photographing my Social Security card, and I have the hard inquiries on my credit report that match the dates on the video." "That changes everything," he said. "That is not a tenant dispute. That is an active crime scene." We formulated a plan. It had to be executed perfectly. If I just went in screaming, she would play the victim, cry about the kids, and mudify the waters. I needed her to incriminate herself in front of authorities. I went to the police station first. I sat down with the detective and showed him the footage of the identity theft conspiracy. I showed him the unauthorized lock change, framing it as evidence of hostile intent and burglary. Because the amount she had already tried to secure in loans exceeded the felony threshold, and because there was video evidence of the conspiracy, they were interested. At 2 p.m., I returned to my apartment. I brought a locksmith, 2 police officers, and a printout of the fraud alerts. I didn't knock. The locksmith drilled the lock in under 2 minutes. I pushed the door open. The officers stood just out of sight in the hallway, flush against the wall. My sister was on the couch, watching TV. The guy from the video, the one with the duffel bag, was there too. He was dismantling my PlayStation 5 on the coffee table. "What the hell?" Sister screamed, jumping up. "I told you to call before coming over. You can't just barge in here." "It is my house," I said calmly, stepping inside. "Who is this?" "This is a friend," she said, stepping in front of the guy. "Get out. I'm calling Mom. You're harassing us." "I know about the credit cards," I said. The room went deadly silent. The friend stopped unscrewing my console. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her eyes darting to the hallway. "I have you on video," I said, stepping closer. "I have Mom on video. You opened a Visa and an Amex in my name. You applied for a $20,000 loan. You pried open my filing cabinet." "You can't prove that. And even if I did, Mom said it was okay. It's family money. We were going to pay you back." "That's confession enough," one of the officers said, stepping into the doorway. My sister's face went white. The friend immediately put his hands up. "I'm just fixing the game, man. I don't know anything about fraud." "ID?" the officer said to the guy. The guy hesitated, looked at the door like he was calculating the distance, then handed it over. The officer radioed it in. While that was happening, my sister turned on the waterworks. "He invited me here. He's lying. He hit me. Look at this bruise." She pointed to a faint mark on her arm. I pulled out my phone. "Officer, I have flight records showing I was in Switzerland until yesterday. I haven't seen her in 6 months prior to yesterday evening, and I have video surveillance of the apartment 24/7. The officer looked at my sister. "Ma'am, step away from the table." The radio crackled. "Subject has active warrant, distribution of controlled substances." The friend bolted. He tried to shove past the officer, but he was tackled into my entry table, smashing a vase. Handcuffs clicked. My sister started screaming. "He's not with me. I don't know him." "Search the bag," the officer said to his partner. The duffel bag the guy had brought wasn't full of clothes. It was full of porch-pirated electronics. My apartment wasn't just a nursery, it was a fencing operation. "My kids," my sister wailed as the officers moved to cuff her. "You can't do this in front of my kids." "You should have thought about that before you turned a crime scene into a daycare," I said. It took 3 hours to process the scene. CPS was called. Because my parents were implicated in the fraud footage I showed the police, they were deemed unsuitable for emergency placement. The kids went to a foster family for the night until the paternal grandparents, Brian's parents, could be contacted. I watched my sister get dragged out in handcuffs, screaming that I was a monster, that I had ruined her life. Then came the phone call. My father. "What have you done? The police are at our door. They want to talk to your mother." "She's on video conspiring to commit felony identity theft. I gave the footage to the detective." "You pressed charges against your own mother?" He sounded incredulous. "Over money? Over a few credit cards?" "Over betrayal," I said. "You let her destroy my home. You helped her steal my identity. You thought I was just a resource to be harvested. We're your parents. We own you." "You don't own me," I said. "And now you don't even know me." I hung up and blocked the number. The fallout has been nuclear. My sister is facing charges for identity theft, bank fraud, and harboring a fugitive, the fence guy. Because she has a prior record of petty theft I didn't know about, the DA is not offering a plea deal. She's looking at 3 to 5 years in prison. My mother was arrested the next day. The video evidence was undeniable. She was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud
and identity theft. My father wasn't charged, but he spent their entire retirement savings bailing her out and hiring a defense attorney. They are likely going to lose their house to pay the legal fees. But here is the twist, the interconnected plot regarding the apartment that made it all make sense. It turns out my sister wasn't just broke. She was in deep debt to a loan shark connected to the guy who was arrested in my apartment. The plan, orchestrated by my parents, was to use my credit to pay off the shark and use my apartment as a safe house because the shark knew where she lived, but he didn't know where I lived. They deliberately put me in the crosshairs of violent criminals to save her skin. If I hadn't come home early, or if I hadn't had those cameras, I would have come back to an empty bank account and possibly a violent home invasion looking for her. I spent the last week scrubbing my apartment. I had to throw away the sofa, the rug, and repaint the walls to get the smell out. I hired a forensic accountant to lock down my credit. Yesterday, I received a letter from my father, sent via a courier since I blocked him digitally. "I hope you are happy. You have destroyed this family. A good son would have taken the debt. You have so much, and you wouldn't share. You are dead to us." I burned the letter in my sink. I sat on my new couch in my clean, quiet, secure apartment. I poured a glass of scotch. I felt a pang of sadness, sure. It is hard to accept that the people who raised you see you as nothing more than an insurance policy. But then I looked at the police report, at the evidence of how easily they were willing to ruin my future to fix her mistakes. I realized I didn't lose a family. I severed a parasitic infection. I am 29, I am free of debt after the banks cleared the fraud charges, and I am finally, truly alone. And for the first time in years, the silence in my apartment doesn't feel lonely. It feels like victory.